Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about bones of skull. And here at the side you can see the colorful diagrammatic representation of skull showing different bones in different color for the reference. So let's start our topic with introduction. Human skull is a complex bone structure that serves multiple critical functions. It protects the brain, supports the structures of face, and provides attachment point for muscles that are involved in chewing and facial expression. Skull is composed of 22 bones, which are categorized into two major groups, cranial bones and facial bone. As you already know, the skull bones are divided into two groups that are cranial bone and facial bone. Cranial bone are the ones that surround and protect the brain, while facial bone are the ones that form the framework of face and support sensory structure. Now let's talk about them one by one. First, we will talk about cranial bones. There are 8 cranial bones which are responsible for forming the cranial cavity that houses the brain. These bones are frontal bone, 2 parietal bone, 2 temporal bone, 1 occipital bone, 1 sphenoid bone and 1 ethmoid bone. Now let's talk about these bones one by one. First we have is frontal bone. As you can see here in the diagram, the yellow color bone is the frontal bone. It forms the forehead and upper part of the eye socket, as you can see here in the diagram. It contains the frontal sinuses and form part of the roof of cranial cavity. Its function is to protect the frontal lobes of brain and it also provides protection to the sensory organ that is eye. Second bone is parietal bone, that is also the cranial bone. As you can see here in the diagram, the purple colored bone is parietal bone. They are pair bone, that means there are 2 parietal bone in every skull. They are located on each side of skull behind the frontal bone. These two bones meet at the midline at the suture that is called a sagittal suture. They form the superior and lateral part of cranium. Third bone is temporal bone. As you can see here in diagram, the blue color bone just below the parietal bone is temporal bone. It is also pair bone, that means there will be 2 temporal bone in every skull. It is situated at the sides and base of skull beneath the parietal bone. It contains the ear canal, mastoid process and zygomatic process. It protects the temporal lobe and houses structures of the ear. Next is occipital bone. As you can see here in the diagram, pink color bone behind the parietal and temporal bone is occipital bone. It forms the base and back of skull. It contains the foramen magnum through which spinal cord passes. It protects the occipital lobe and allows communication between the brain and spinal cord. Next bone is sphenoid bone. As you can see here in diagram, the orange color bone just in front of temporal bone is the sphenoid bone. It is unpaired bone, that means there will be 1 sphenoid bone in every skull. It lies in the middle of the skull towards the front. It is shaped like a butterfly that includes the sella turcica, which houses the pituitary gland. It acts as a keystone bone, articulating with several other skull bones. Next bone is ethmoid bone. As you can see here in diagram, in the orbital cavity, the dark green color bone is ethmoid bone. It is situated between the eyes, forming part of nasal cavity and orbit. It contains the cerebriform plate or cribriform plate and perpendicular plate. It supports the nasal cavity and contributes to the medial wall of orbit, as you can see here in the diagram. Now let's talk about facial bones. There are 14 facial bones that form the structure of the face, support sensory organs and assist in functions like chewing and speech. They include nasal bone, maxilla, zygomatic bone, mandible, lacrimal bones, palatine bones, inferior nasal conchae and vomer. Now let's talk about these bones one by one. First we have is nasal bone. As you can see here in diagram, the orange color bone just below the frontal bone is a nasal bone. It is pair bone, that means there will be 2 nasal bones in every skull. It forms the bridge of the nose. It supports the cartilage that forms the lower part of the nose. Next is maxilla. Here you can see the skin color bone is the maxilla that is holding up the upper teeth. It is pair bone, that means there will be 2 maxilla in every skull. It forms the upper jaw and central face. It forms the upper jaw, the parts of orbit, and contains the upper teeth and maxillary sinuses. It anchors upper teeth and forms most of the hard palate. Next bone is zygomatic bone. As you can see here at the diagram, just at the side of maxilla, lateral side of maxilla, there is green color bone, that is zygomatic bone. They are pair bone, that means there will be 2 zygomatic bone in every skull. They are located at the cheekbone area. They articulate with the maxilla, temporal bone and sphenoid bone. They form the prominence of cheeks and part of the lateral wall of orbit. Next bone is mandible. As you can see here in the diagram, light pink color bone at the lower region is the mandible. It is unpaired bone, that means there will be one mandible in every skull. It is located at the lower jaw area. Its function is it is the largest and strongest facial bone. It contains the lower teeth and articulates with the temporal bone at the temporomandibular joint. It is essential for chewing and speech. Next bone is lacrimal bone. As you can see here in diagram, the red color bone in the orbital cavity is the lacrimal bone. There are two bones, that means they are paired bone, and they are present at the medial wall of each orbit, as you can see here in the diagram. They contain a groove for the lacrimal sac. They support the tear drainage system. Next bone is palatine bone. They are located at the back part of nasal cavity and the hard palate. They contribute to the floor of nasal cavity and part of orbit. Next is inferior nasal conchae. It is located inside the nasal cavity. Its function is to increase surface area for warming and humidifying inhaled air. Next bone is vomer. It is located in the nasal cavity. It forms the lower part of the nasal septum. Now let's talk about sutures of skull. Sutures are immovable joints that connect bones of skull. Major sutures include coronal suture, that is between the frontal bone and parietal bone. As you can see here in the diagram, the suture between frontal bone and parietal bone is called as coronal suture. Next is sagittal suture, that is between the two parietal bones. Next is lambdoid suture, that is between the parietal bone and occipital bone. Next is squamous suture, that is between the parietal bone and temporal bone. Now let's talk about functions of skull bone. First is protection, as they encase the brain and sensory organ. Second is support, as they form the structure of head and face. Third is movement, as they provide attachment for muscles involved in movement and expression. Fourth is respiration and digestion, as they assist in breathing, eating, and speech. Fifth is hematopoiesis, as some bones contain bone marrow that is involved in blood cell formation. Now let's talk about conclusion of this lecture video. Bones of skulls are intricately arranged to protect the brain, support facial structures, and allow important functions such as hearing, vision, smell, chewing, and speech. A comprehensive understanding of these bones is essential for studies in anatomy, medicine, and related fields. So this was all about bones of skull. Hopefully you liked the video. If you do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you for watching.